Darkscape. I opened my eyes into utter blackness. Where am I thought. My mind was hazy with a feeling of just waking up from the deepest of sleep. I realized I was laying on the ground, and then I tried to ease my way into sitting up. My head swam with the dreariness of the effort. I looked around at my surroundings, and I couldn't make anything out in the darkness. I got to my knees and began to feel about with my hands. I felt the coldness and hardness of stone as my fingers sought to communicate to my brain something of where I was presently at. A few more minutes of this and my mind cleared a bit. I was able to stand now, and I moved against the stone surface in an attempt to understand some more of my present surroundings. I smelled earthen tones and subtle wetness in the air as I fumbled in the dark. I don't know exactly how long I did this, but soon my fingers found a surface that felt vaguely like a door of sorts. As I traced the rectangular shape of the door, my hand found a metal hook fastened into it. I pulled. Nothing happened. I tried then to push, and with a slow grinding, the door to my temporary imprisonment opened outwards. Wind and dust rushed at my face as I pushed with much effort, and a muted brightness came over me. I looked out from where I had emerged, and what I saw was wholly foreign to me. The landscape was barren and dry, with dead trees and brush in all directions. The light I saw was only bright compared to the total darkness I had emerged from. I saw no people, no animals, and no signs of life in any direction. I turned to look at where I'd come out of and saw a dark stone building with no markings, just a solitary and medieval-looking door that I had pushed open. My mind struggled to put into sense what I was seeing and why I wasn't at home with my family. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last thing I could before I awoke on that stone floor. I remembered work. I remember leaving in my car and driving home, and then nothing. Only the blackness that greeted me as I had awoken. I sat on a dead tree stump nearby and tried to figure out what to do next. I looked around and strained my eyes to make out any normal-looking shape in the distance, something that might give me a direction to head in. I looked down at my clothes and didn't recognize what I was wearing. Some sort of basic cloth pants and a shirt in dull colors. My phone and wallet were gone also. I had nothing, not even my wedding ring. At last I saw something different in the distance, a structure of sorts. It was too far to make out any details, but it was large and looked to be castle-shaped. I was still very confused by all this, but I wasn't just going to sit here until I starved. No, I was going to find out where I was. I sighed in frustration and stood up. Whatever that building was, it had more answers than I would get out here. So I started walking. The wind picked up as I started towards the tower I saw in the distance, and I pulled the shirt up over my mouth and nose to keep the dust out. It was hard to make out anything much further than a few dozen yards in any direction. The howling of the wind was all I could hear as well. Since I had no way of knowing what time it was, I just made my feet move until they got tired and I needed a rest. I stopped at the edge of what looked like a dry riverbed. There was dead grass and trees on either side of the river, and everything looked like death. I heard something new now, something far away and animal-like. It was impossible to imagine what it could have been with the wind constantly assaulting my senses, but at least there might be something alive out there besides myself. I started again after I had regained my strength, but I was getting thirsty. I saw nothing that indicated any sort of water or sustenance I could make use of. My mouth was drier than I could ever remember it being before. I knew very little of outdoor survival. I had spent most of my adult life behind a desk or at home. I wished I had paid attention a little bit more in the Boy Scouts when I was younger. Suddenly I heard a sound. It was high and eerie sounding, like a kind of dog or something. It grew closer. I didn't want to take the chance that it was some rabid dog that might attack, so I crouched low to the ground. I saw it now, about 20 yards from where I was standing. It was a dog, but not like anything I had ever seen. It was large. very large. Dark hair covered its body, and along the dog's spine the hair pointed upwards. No, not hair. Squinting, I could see that it wasn't hair, but spikes or quills that darted up from its hide. What in the world? I said to myself. It was sniffing the air and training its head back and forth as if it was trying to find something. Oh no, it's looking for me. It was hunting. My heart started pounding in my chest and I looked around for somewhere to hide. I spotted a downed tree nearby and I crawled slowly and purposefully towards it. It was hollow, thankfully, so I pulled myself inside. My breathing was harsh and fast, and my heart echoed in unison. I heard scraping and huffing from somewhere close by, and I covered my mouth, desperately trying to become invisible. The beast I had seen had indeed caught my scent. I heard it right outside my hiding spot, and I prayed that it wouldn't find me. I had no weapons to defend myself, and if it found me, I knew I was dead. Heavy breathing and snorting could be heard not feet from where I lay, and panic was near to taking over. Suddenly, though, I heard a sharp cry in the distance, and the dog outside stopped what it was doing and let out a mournful cry of its own. It was terrifying. Then I heard the beast take off on a run, and I was finally able to breathe again. I stayed where I was for a very long time. I didn't want a chance that that monster dog would find my scent again and come back. It seemed to be getting darker since my encounter with that thing, and I decided I didn't want to risk walking in the dark with no weapons and no food or water. I shook my head in anger and resentment for my present situation. I was alone and in a place I couldn't have imagined in my worst dreams. I was still alive, though, and that thought gave me at least a margin of hope for the coming morning, and I would start again. So I got as comfortable as a person could get inside of a hollow log and tried to get my eyes to stay shut. It was a long time before sleep came. I awoke to blurry and muted light and cramped limbs when my eyes opened. With yesterday's events, I was apprehensive to leave my only source of comfort, but my hunger and thirst provided enough motivation to will my body to emerge from my accommodations, such as they were. Everything was exactly the same as before. Dry and dead blasted land spread out in a vast picture of bleakness in every direction. The wind was again howling and attacking my face as I began my march towards the only direction I could go. I walked for what seemed like hours. It could even have been days. I was completely without any concept of the passage of time here. The landscape and the strange light made everything feel like an awful dream. I could only risk a forward glance periodically because of the wind, but as I gazed forward, I could see the structure was very close now. A few moments longer and I stood at the gates of a gigantic structure. Made of metal and stone, it looked to be some sort of massive fortress from some forgotten time. Everything was dark all around it, as if what little light there was couldn't even fall upon it. As I ascended the stairs, I saw to either side of me were two huge statues of a three-headed dog. What is this place? I wondered. As I gained the upper landing, an immense door stood in front of me. I slowly walked up to it and placed both my hands upon it. To my surprise, the gigantic door swung open as if it weighed nothing. Inside there was even less light than I had experienced when I first emerged into this god-forsaken land. My eyes struggled to adjust to this nearly impenetrable blackness. I hadn't even noticed that the door was closing behind me until it made an echoing slam. I did the only thing I could think of doing, and I started forward. The outer opening near the door narrowed as I continued forward, and a looming hallway stretched out in front of me. With my eyes adjusted now, I could make out statues on either side of me as I walked. Large man-shaped carvings of some sort of warriors adorned the hallway as far as I could make out. They looked to be wearing various kinds of armor, but what caught my eye were the expressions chiseled on them. Each one had a different kind of agony etched in their faces, almost as if they had been turned to stone while they were still alive. I continued down the hallway for what seemed like hours when I at last came to a large chamber. My footsteps echoed with muted cadence as I gazed upwards towards the room's ceiling. At the center of the chamber's roof was a stained glass mural. The scene depicted there featured disturbing images: fire, mountains erupting, meteors raining down, and people. People were burning in a huge lake of fire, all with their arms outstretched. A voice boomed like cannon fire behind me. The sound the voice made scared me so utterly that I fell backwards to the floor. I looked around, but I saw nothing. Who's there?" I asked timidly. Just then, a shadow blacker even than the darkest of night materialized in front of me. I got to my feet and stared in shock as two eyes burning bright with fire stared down at me.
"I am the darkness. Why are you here?"
I had trouble even thinking at this point, as the fear I felt now was nearly material. I'm trying to get home," I said, only slightly less afraid this time.
"You cannot."
The voice spoke with its anger seething. "Why?" I asked.
"You are mine,"
it roared. I don't understand," I said.
"For all eternity, you are mine."
It roared anew. I stepped backwards now as the voice seemed to be pushing me, even without touching me. Then I saw something behind it. A door. The shadow seemed to notice this and moved to block my gaze.
"Mine!"
It screamed at me. I moved very slowly to the side of the shadow and saw the faintest glimmer of brightness at the seam of the door. I started walking even without realizing it. The light was calling me.
"No!"
The shadow hissed. It came closer to me now. It was right on top of me. I felt dizzy, and a feeling in my head of hopelessness washed over me like a cold stream of water. I closed my eyes and I could hear the light. I don't know how to explain it, but I could hear it. I kept my eyes shut as I got up and started walking again. Images flooded my mind now. Screaming black images tore at me inside my mind. I struggled now, slowing. The presence in my head now a whirling torrent of hate and malice. "No, I can't stop," I said inside my mind. I could still hear the light though, and it was getting louder. I tried with all my willpower to see my loved ones' faces. I was almost near the door when the darkness came at me with such writhing agony that I thought I would lose my mind. My fingers felt the surface. The shadow pressed harder. I pushed with everything inside of me, and light exploded into my mind. I saw a tunnel of light in front of me now. No, it was me. My eyes were the tunnel, and the light was coming from above me. I blinked several times and looked around. My family was there, and some people dressed in white overcoats were all standing around looking down on me. I started to understand. I was in a hospital, lying on a bed. My family all looked exhausted, but they were smiling as if they hadn't seen me in a very long time. I was home.